All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for carving time out of your Thursday evening to come be with us and see what we've been working on all week. This is hot off the presses. We just finished this presentation at 5:57, which is actually a little bit better than what we normally do. So you're getting the latest and greatest. My name is Eric Childs. I'm a senior landscape architect with Tool Design. I'm joined by my team, Vanessa Lira, Ritika Narang, Nina Ndichu, Evan Holliday, and Bonnie Moser. So we are a group of landscape architects, urban designers, planners, engineers, and authors. So we're responsible for writing guidance for walkability and bikeability at the federal, state, and local levels. We've worked for cities, all different sizes, but beyond just providing guidance, we've also worked in towns like Sulphur Springs, pictured here, re-envisioning their downtown. We transform streets, and we can also imagine entire districts. So a quick recap of what we're doing here. There's a number of ongoing efforts in the city. This project that we're working on, which is the Anna marketing map effort, builds on previous efforts, which has included a lot of community input and feedback over the years. So this is a continuation of things like the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan, and the recently completed comprehensive plan update. We're also situated sort of in the middle of a couple of other efforts that are going on right now. There's the branding and identity effort that's going on with the city of Anna. Following this will be a look at the historic resources and aspects of Anna. What do we want to do with the historic assets that we have? But what we're working on is this middle piece. What do we want at downtown Anna to look and feel like? So what do I mean by we? I mean you all. So this starts with a shared vision. We've been here all week. We kicked off Monday night with an interactive session, and you can see the results posted up on the walls. We asked 4 questions that I'll recap in a bit. But we heard from the community, and that informed every bit of our work. What we're using that feedback to create is a set of tools that can guide decisions about the public realm in downtown Anna, and it's going to result in a framework that makes it buildable, really kind of an illustrative master plan, but it's a little bit different from that. It's going to be a visual plan that shows how downtown can grow and change over time. It'll be a tool to guide both public investment and private development. And it's going to include concept layouts for key sites, including legacy family-owned properties, street and block structure, locations for parks, civic spaces, and development. And that's going to help property owners and developers see what's possible. And that helps create a shared direction for projects are proposed. And one of the things that we will include later on, not tonight, are these types of renderings, these photorealistic renderings that help illustrate what we're talking about. And we go from plan view down to street level. So after this week, this has been a great week, also a hectic week. They always are. But we're going to take some time after we hear from you tonight, and we're going to put together a development report. It's going to be very graphic heavy, and it'll be a showcase for investors and a tool for the city. It'll be a living document too. So the anticipation is that as things change, as conditions change, I mean, cities are not static, they're always changing. So this will be a first attempt at creating what downtown can look and feel like. But again, the hope is that it gives clarity to property owners about expectations, clarity to developers on what we're trying to achieve, but it will adapt and change. So I want to talk a little bit about what we heard this week. We've had a number of public engagement opportunities Monday during our kickoff. I already talked about that. We've had such great feedback. We had, I think, 50 or 60 folks attend Monday, and we heard diversity of views. But what was remarkable is we were hearing a lot of common themes. That was followed up by stakeholder meetings Tuesday and Wednesday. And we met with a number of community members, city leadership, property owners, and we even received some really lovely emails and written documents about what people's thoughts were about what Anna could be and what they hope it can be. So we've been you don't always get this level of feedback, and we were really excited about that. So these are a few images from Monday night. And these are the 4 questions we asked. What do you like and wish to preserve? What do you dislike and want to change? What's missing that you'd like to see created? And what are the key values that should shape the core of downtown Anna? So a few of the themes that we heard, what do you like and wish to preserve? People were pretty consistently saying that they wanted to maintain not only the actual historic structures, but the character, the look and feel of those historic structures. When Anna grows, and it's been growing, it will continue to grow, they would like to see traditional materials. They'd like to see small local businesses grow and thrive here. But let's get a little bit longer. What do you dislike, want to change? And that's totally normal, by the way. A lack of walkability was a pretty common theme that we heard. People want more options for entertainment and food. We heard a lot about feeling uncomfortable with traffic on Powell and White, backing out on 4th Street, which is something I've had a few scary moments myself. The inability to cross Powell, too many apartments, and a lack of cohesiveness in terms of architectural styles. What's missing that you'd like to see created? The list gets a little bit longer, but again, that's good. People are thinking about what they want the future to be. So spaces for all ages, children, families, seniors, a number of spaces that don't exist right now, like community or event centers, senior centers, visitor centers, recreation centers, a downtown association, unique local businesses. The list goes on. I'm not going to read everything, but there were a lot of lovely ideas here. Local art was something that came up quite a bit. A lake and water feature and stormwater infrastructure that'll come into play later. And people also expressed the desire to be able to move around more easily on golf carts, which comes into play when we're going to show you some ideas we have about our streets. And then what are the key values that should shape Anna? People were pretty clear on this. They want Anna to be inviting, friendly, walkable, and connected. They want the downtown to foster a strong sense of community and be friendly to small businesses. Again, tying back to the historic aspect of Anna, we were given a couple of the books written about the history of Anna. And I have to pause for a minute and say it was so lovely to read some of those stories and see just how painstakingly that has been chronicled. It's something very special. And again, not something we always see. People want Anna to be safe and fun and intentional. Somebody wrote down long-term thinking, and I tried to interpret it as a value. So I'm going to recap real quickly just a couple of local precedents that we've been involved in. Sulphur Springs and Denison. I'm going to fly through these slides because I showed some of these on Monday, and I know we want to get to what we actually created. But Sulphur Springs and Denison both started with a very similar process. We had buildings that were in a downtown in Sulphur Spring that was really in need of some love. Just going to show some before and afters here. This is the power of the public realm when done right to transform your downtown and make it more welcoming to local businesses, attract people who want to walk and live there, spend their local dollars that stay in the community. This is the historic courthouse in Denison from above, before and after. And we've unlocked a lot of things there. And I say we, the community. I mean, it was a community-led vision. We helped with the expertise that we have in terms of how cities how cities thrive, how streets thrive. I mean, that's what we bring to the table, but this was a community vision. So we unlocked a lot of great activities for people of all ages and abilities. And all the folks circled here are using mobility devices. So there's a lot of attention to detail in terms of accessibility, making it welcoming to everybody. Same thing with Denison. A process just like this one resulted in a development report, much like we're going to create. That was a little more project specific. It was focused on their Main Street rather than an entire downtown district. But again, the first phase of Denison was the ribbon cutting for that phase was held, I think, in 2023, and work is ongoing. So I want to talk a little bit about and reflect what we heard in terms of what you all desired downtown Anna to look and feel like. So I've got some examples here of mixed use and retail development. And what we want to emphasize here is people wanted to see activity. They wanted active storefronts. They wanted, you all were telling us, like, no more than 3 stories, which even then might be pushing it. So we were kind of sitting in the 1 to 3 story range. In terms of height, in terms of the character, we're thinking brick, concrete, wood. So these are some examples pulled from all over the country. This is Middleburg, Virginia. I worked on this project, population of 700. Hammond's Ferry, North Augusta, South Carolina, close to my home. Again, thinking about scale and active uses. Denison, of course, their population is a little bit less than y'all, 26,500. Sulphur Springs, that I mentioned before, 17,000 people live there. And then McKinney, we heard a lot about McKinney this week, and their population is quite a bit higher than you guys, 207,000. From what I saw. But these are examples that are close by and reflect the kind of street activity that we're seeking. And it sounds like you guys want it. So that's we're trying to put images to the plan view drawings that you'll see later. So in terms of like urban downtown living, what does it look and feel like? So there are a number of examples here. Again, forgive the 4th story for that Savannah example, chop it off. But there's some really lovely architectural styles that can be applied for things like townhomes. And this left example and the top example are townhomes. And then this is mixed use in Savannah. So retail on the bottom and living on top. These are a few images from Glenwood Park in Atlanta. So this gets away from townhomes a little bit. It reflects more of a single family. It's a more dense pattern of development for single family houses, but you get things like front porches. It starts to accommodate higher end development, which is another thing that we heard. And then these are more like neighborhood streets. A few more examples of townhomes. And then we did hear a little bit about the Texas wrap as another way to incorporate this. Now, is this as aesthetically pleasing or is it the right scale? We're not sure. But what it does do well is that to the interior of that development is a parking garage. And we heard a lot about parking. So rather than have a ton of open parking lots, we thought a lot about ways to create better relationships between the streets and people using it. And if you want to make the best and highest use of your street and create really the best value per acre, you have to think about either consolidating parking or thinking about it from a district-wide strategy and putting it on the edge. So the Texas wrap is something that came up. And we also want to think about estate lots, larger homes that can maybe happen along the edges of downtown. So we're working with a number of precedents and trying to think about what this can look and feel like. Again, these are examples from all over the country. This would, of course, need to reflect the character of Anna. So, it's about types. It's not about a specific style that I'm showing. It's about really kind of the form. So another thing we thought about are parks, open space, and stormwater management. So in talking with some of the city staff and leadership, it sounds like there's been an identified and clear need to think about stormwater on a district-wide or really a region-wide basis. And so if downtown is going to develop, that stormwater has to go somewhere. And a lot of times that happens on a parcel-by-parcel basis, meaning that you'd have to have a detention ponds with every little thing that comes in, if you don't think about it from a larger scale perspective. The other way, and I would argue the smarter way to do it, and this is supported by conversations I've had with stormwater engineers, is think about a comprehensive area, and can you put your stormwater retention in one place? And as a landscape architect, the follow-up question I ask is, okay, I get the need for stormwater retention, you got to have it, but how can we make it nice, attractive, usable, and something that welcomes people into that space? So the two images on the left are examples of, those are stormwater retention facilities that have incorporated trails and activity along the edges to make them community assets. And then this image on the right, the idea of a gazebo that stretches out a little bit over the water. Again, something that attracts people. I mean, that's a Instagram opportunity or whatever. I try to stay off of social media. But those are examples of helping to activate those spaces that also serve a specific function for the city and allow development to happen. So park space. We heard some great ideas about splash pads, about reflecting how water moves, and the upper left images is from a park in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is kind of, it's a wonderful like children's play area where they can actually like dam and undam water and make sand wet or keep it dry. It's really fantastic. And then the lower right image is a splash pad adjacent to an open farmer's market in Greenwood, South Carolina, a tiny little town. And you can see all the activity, and you can't see it in that image, but there's a food truck back there. So we're thinking about how to activate these spaces. You'll see in our concept for downtown a number of green spaces, and we're thinking about play opportunities, ways to express public art. I know there's a lot of interest in the arts in this community. We're thinking about trails and little moments that can happen alongside trails and how the trails can relate to other uses. We heard a lot about trails this week and the desire to connect to your parks, and that's also a big part of our downtown concept. A few other examples of I think like that yellow table is ping pong, and then the short yellow table is ping pong, and the long table is just simply a kind of a flashy extended picnic table. So there are lots of opportunities. And then I'm going to talk a minute about something slightly technical and slightly geeky too. Curbless streets or flush streets. So we'll get into where this specifically happens in the plan, but the idea with curbless streets, and I know these have curbs, but I'm showing kind of what traditional stormwater does. So on the left, you've got kind of a traditional section for a street with curb, sidewalk, curb and gutter, and the street, and the highest point or the crown of the street's in the middle. So stormwater collects on the edges where you see the two blue lines. If you introduce something called a valley gutter, which is, if you see the little V-shaped thing above those two squiggly lines on the right, that's a way to collect and convey stormwater in the street. And of course, it can be supplemented with drains and such. But what's nice about that is if you have on-street parking, it creates a way for water to get away from that on-street parking. It also pushes the stormwater away from your building face, which is really important. So now with flush streets or flush curved streets. So there's a type of street design we've done, and I showed you images of it in both Denison and Sulphur Spring, where you don't have a 6-inch curve. It's actually all flush. It's all at the same level. And the advantage of that is that there are lots of advantages, one of them being making spaces accessible to all. But for flush and shared streets, valley gutters are pretty much mandatory because you want to get that water as far away from the building face as possible. And you definitely don't want to drain, you don't want to do this, which is what a conventional street would do, which is pushing the drainage closer to the building face. And again, a couple of examples of flush streets with a valley gutter here. This is built and folks in our firm were involved in this. And again, this is Sulphur Spring with this part is curved to protect the trees, but then it goes away and there's a valley gutter right there. And this is an example of the street being shut down on a weekend to accommodate a festival. All right, so now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Vanessa and others to talk about what we've come up with.
Hey everybody, we're so excited to be here. Like Eric said, we heard amazing feedback from everyone, and so I'm going to show our translation of what we heard from you onto a plan. I'll go over briefly an overview, and then some of my colleagues are going to talk about different pieces of it. We also have that plan on the table that we can huddle around after this and have discussions. So just looking at the existing condition, a few things that we heard, fourth being your historic main street, so wanting to bring back some of those structures that have been burned down and think of that as a good place for additional retail and commerce. Also interurban as a street that is already going to have some investment in being a type of main street, both on the north side and the south side. So we've been thinking about those as kind of the core of hub and activity as festival streets. And then thinking about Powell, we heard a lot of different things about it, but really what came out of it is that we want to shift the main walkable activity away from that and really focus on 4th and interurban. For 4th Street, making sure that we're connecting to both sides, especially on the rail side, thinking about some of the historic structures in the Shirley Heritage Park. We've been thinking about district parking scenarios as well. So parking along the edges of downtown and then having a couple-minute walk to your destination along with on-street parking for temporary parking. So this is the plan, and I know it's small here, and we'll zoom in a little bit. We have on the west side, which is to your left, and the east side on the right. We're right here, where those white buildings are. So looking north to interurban, and then east and west along 4th Street, and those are those festival flush streets images that Eric showed earlier. We're proposing those to be retail, mixed-use, commercial, as well as having some of that along Powell with a frontage street that allows for slower movement and more pedestrian friendly off of the right of way. So a developer, as they develop those pieces, would be able to add in those amenities off the right of way. And then also thinking about connectivity and connecting some of the dead end streets on the eastern side and giving a street frontage to Deer Park and really being able to leverage that more. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then we have these two areas kind of circled there. Those are vignettes. We have a couple of different ideas for those, so we'll go through both of them. So looking here more zoomed in on the northern part of downtown, we have 4th and Interurban as the main streets, Interurban terminating in this facility right here, and then looking at potential redevelopment of commercial parcels along Powell, with the parcels that face Powell being mixed use, commercial, offices, multifamily, and then the back of that block that faces residential being things that are smaller scale, like the more compact single family that Eric was showing, or the townhouses. So you have that residential to residential across the street. Continuing on to South Interurban, continuing that idea of that being your main retail street. And then we've also tucked away 2 parking decks that you can see on the east side there that are wrapped with buildings. And so that will really allow for people to come off of Powell or White, get into the district, park their car, park their golf cart, whatever they're riding, and be able to walk around. And we have a couple other spots for parking as well that we'll talk about. Okay, so thinking about the properties west of Powell, one thing that we heard is really thinking about connectivity for bike, ped, golf cart. And so we're proposing continuing the trail along the creek all the way to the south. And so that is what you're seeing on the left-hand side there, that tan line with the arrows. And this one is showing that retention pond that Eric was speaking to around it, small scale multifamily, whether that's a townhouse or a cottage quarter, things like that. And then along Powell, being able to up the density a little bit. So that's our first scheme for this area. And I will hand it off to Nina.
Thanks, Vanessa. Okay. So this one takes it to a different level. We're going to be thinking about that Texas wrap and having the parking tucked away in the back, not having it frontage any of the streets that we want to have them pedestrian focused. Okay, so we talked a lot about stormwater, and you do have an existing creek on the west side of the downtown. So Vanessa already talked about the trail connecting to Slater that we want to continue all the way. So the arrow that's there on the north side just means it's connecting to the existing trail system that will lead all the way to Slater. But thinking about just like stormwater management, but that can also be a nice water feature that's next to the creek. So that's where you have like the water coming all the way down and then into this retention pond at the south side of downtown, and having that recreational center, that community center, senior center as the main kind of like the focal point, and it acts as the entry point of Anna downtown. Because right now Anna doesn't really have a sense of arrival until you get to this municipal square and you're like, hey, I've gotten to downtown. But right now having that recreation ecological focus and having that welcoming as a gateway to Anna downtown is kind of the thought here. And Powell will remain the same, still have the retail kind of offices, dentists, where people just want to come and leave out, you're not really lingering or anything like Interurban and 4th, as Vanessa already mentioned. And the orange options are that Texas wrap that we talked about. And it's mostly, it is residential, but it's that high end and, talking about views to the water, just like very high end and having awesome views. Okay, the next one is at the bottom there. There was, we talked to the engineers today from the city, and they also talked about another detention pond happening at the bottom. But since you have this massive space of green right now, thinking about activating it and actually programming that space. So having that water feature with a boardwalk that goes across, and again, since it's residential focus, just promoting that health and wellness, that walkability, places where people can actually walk around or run around if need be. And we heard a lot about having like sort of gathering areas that have fire pits or just areas where they can people watch, where you have like different types of seating. So you have movable furniture, you have Adirondack chairs, and you have fixed benches where they can just sit and stare at the water. And the good thing about detention ponds, they usually attract a lot of wildlife. So there is a lot of stuff to do just when you stare at the water. But it's very, green space focused, and it activates that lower part of the south side of White. And it kind of connects to the rail trail that Vanessa talked about, which will be on the west side of the trail tracks that goes all the way to the north to Hackberry. And I would hand it over back to Bonnie.
Hi everyone. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Myself and Ritika worked on looking at your streets, in particular interurban and Fourth, to see how we can make them comfortable and how they can respond to what you said that your needs would be. I'll talk about interurban first. You can see the existing condition right now. It's basically just a street without sidewalks. It ranges from about 52 feet of right-of-way to 80 feet of right-of-way. And what you saw in the plan earlier is there's a portion of interurban north of this complex and south of this complex that will be retail focused. We talked about A streets in our presentation on Monday and how those are viewed. And then north of that and south of those retail areas turn back into residential. So I'm going to show you 4 different options for the street. And they each have, they each kind of prioritize something different, but all of them prioritize or have a focus on walkability, providing shade, and also in the retail areas, providing space for dining and other types of street furniture. So this is option 1, which is just looking at expanding those edges, have a nice wide comfortable sidewalk, and then a landscape or amenity zone so that you can have your trees and your dining spaces, and then keeping our street at about 10 feet wide length, which is a typical width that you would see in a downtown or retail area. So we make sure that everybody can make it through the street, but they're also not very wide streets, so folks aren't speeding through places where we have lots of pedestrians. Option 2 is providing a little bit of parking on these streets. This could happen both in the residential and retail areas. Still have wider sidewalks, but trying to provide some space for trees that are a little bit narrower. So we're sacrificing a little bit of pedestrian space for the parking. Option 3 is providing a little bit more parking. You can see those sidewalks get a bit narrower. And then option 4 is something Eric talked about earlier, the flush street. So if you're thinking about your very retail-focused portions of interurban, this is a possibility with a shared street. One of the great things about this is it makes the street really flexible. You can shut it down if you want to have a festival, and folks can traverse the whole street very easily. It's also comfortable in a space where you would expect people to be maybe crossing the street, not just at intersections, but at any point. And we expect vehicles along these types of streets to be driving very slowly, and also just not to see a lot of vehicular traffic in general. The pedestrians, the golf carts, the cyclists, they're really going to be the people who you see on these streets. And I will pass it on to Richard to talk about Fourth.
Hi everyone, this is Rebecca, and so I'll be talking about 4th Street. I first wanted to talk about the big picture idea, just reinforce it again. It is the historic Main Street. It is the east-west access line which connects in the urban, which is north and south, and it's the idea behind it was for it to be pedestrian friendly, a playful, festive street. It has businesses as you go west to the rail park, and it also has a Shirley Heritage Park. So like a very playful quality where kids would go, where families would go to their coffee shop or like to buy shopping stuff. We've got two different sections on 4th Street. The first one is through Shirley Heritage Park, and the second one is through businesses. This is the one through Shirley Heritage Park, and just like you're just studying how the existing right of way looks, it's 85 feet wide. It has 20 feet of parallel parking, and then it has 20 feet travel lanes. So this side is where the park is, which is 25 feet buffer within the right of way. And then on the other side, it is 20 feet of grass buffer. So the main idea behind the proposal of this section was to add, to get shade and comfort, as well as to get pedestrian access. So we are to the side that is close to the park, we are providing like a 15 feet sidewalk, and then we are providing 8 feet of buffer between the on-street head-on parking and the sidewalk. And then on the other side, we are providing 8 feet of buffer and 10 feet of sidewalk. And this is the second option where it's like instead of the current head-on parking, we are looking at 8 feet of parallel parking on both the sides. And then again, like walkability. So we're providing sidewalk on both the sides, like a wider sidewalk that is close to the park. So this is the next existing section that is cut as you cross the rail line where the businesses are. And currently the right of way is 80 feet and it has 20 feet of head-on parking on both the sides and really wide travel lanes 15 feet wide. And we currently only 10 feet of sidewalk exists on one side of the businesses. So this is the proposal for 4th Street near businesses, and like what we are thinking of the street is a curbless, very pedestrian friendly, festive streets where like you have 20 feet of travel lanes, basically the same kind of street that Eric showed before, 8 feet of parallel parking on both the sides, trees for shade and comfort, and then close, like on one side we're showing 17 feet of sidewalk, and this can also be for outdoor dining and walking, and the same like 10 feet of sidewalk on the other side. So these are some examples of lush streets and how the quality and the character of the street can look like once it's built. And I will pass it on to Eric.
Thanks, everyone. What's next? Well, we want to hear from you guys. That's going to be a key part of what happens after this week. Because after tonight, we're going to take your feedback and use it to refine our ideas for the marketing map and mobility standards, which will be part of that development report that I mentioned. And I do want to add a quick, or maybe not so quick disclaimer. So these are all starter ideas. And what I mean by that is nothing is set in stone. This is meant to be, parts of this represent low-hanging fruit that can happen sooner rather than later. And I'm sure you saw pretty obvious ideas in here that are much longer term. And what happens in between now and ribbon cutting of one of these projects? Quite a bit. So for things like the new building, like mixed-use retail, new residential, that depends on a lot of things: developer interest, favorable market and economic conditions, and continued growth. identify key locations, and then you have to go through the whole design process, concept design, which sometimes is where it stops because it doesn't fit with your community's vision. If it does fit with your community's vision, then it moves on towards design development, final design, construction documentation, and then it's got to be built. And that may happen parcel by parcel. There may be certain opportunities where things are packaged together and you get a piece of residential and a piece of mixed use and more parking. So I mean, there's nothing in here that's imminent. It has been shaped by your voices. It should continue to be shaped by your voices, and that's the intent moving forward, because what comes out of this, the marketing map and development tool, again, it's to illustrate a vision that reflects y'all's values, and then things will change over time. I think it was Dwight Eisenhower who said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. And so what he meant by that is the moment a plan meets reality, and he's talking in the context of war planning, but I mean the same is true. Cities are living things; they're always changing, and so the plans have to adapt to the way that the city is changing itself and the things that shape the city. So I just want to be really clear that that's what's happening here, and this is meant to be a living document that changes over time. Based on y'all's input. So that's my quick caveat. I also want to say we showed a lot of drawings up here on the screen. I had a hard time reading them, or a few of them. They are all out, so you guys are welcome to gather around. We'll ask questions, and we want to ask questions right now. And so what I'll do is I'll stay up here. And if anyone has a question, I'll hand you this mic, and then we can talk about it, if that sounds all right to you guys. So, any questions, comments, feedback?
No pressure.
Yeah.